2, 1.
In this video, we're going to discuss intensive pronouns and reflexive pronouns. So let's start with intensive pronouns. An intensive pronoun emphasizes a noun in another pronoun in a sentence. So if we take a look at the name of this, notice how it has intense kind of in its name. So its name kind of has a definition embedded into it. And our trick is it is not necessary to the meaning of a sentence. So in other words, we can take this pronoun out of the sentence and the sentence would still make sense. So let's take a look at an example. Mr. Hall himself baked a cake. Himself is the pronoun in this sentence. Notice how if we took himself out, this sentence would still make sense. Mr. Hall baked a cake, the sentence would make sense. So the only job of himself is to make this sentence more intense. So just the opposite is reflexive pronouns. And the definition of reflexive pronouns is it reflects or refers to the subject of a sentence. So it reflects to the subject of a sentence. Notice how reflects, it's again kind of right in its name. The definition is kind of right in the name. Our trick to this one, this is just the opposite. So these pronouns are necessary to the meaning of a sentence. In other words, I can't take the pronoun out or the sentence would not make sense. So if we take a look at our example here, Mr. Lawler likes to challenge himself while lifting. Notice how himself is a pronoun. Also notice how himself reflects or refers to the subject, Mr. Lawler. And also notice if I was to not use himself in the sentence, this sentence would not make sense. So Mr. Lawler likes to challenge while lifting, that doesn't make sense. So just like our pronouns, we have first, second, and third person reflexive and intensive pronouns. Reflexive and intensive pronouns are the same pronouns. So all these words are reflexive and intensive. It's just the job is different. Okay, so remember, intensive pronouns make the sentence more intense. Reflexive pronouns are necessary in a sentence. So these are first person reflexive pronouns. These are second person reflexive pronouns. And these last four are third person reflexive pronouns. These should all be in your interactive notebook. So let's take a look at some examples and see if we can identify whether it is a reflexive or intensive pronoun. Okay, so we already talked about all these. These are just examples of reflexive and intensive pronouns. So let's take a look at this sentence here. We have Mr. Baldwin himself graded all his students' essays. So our first job is we're going to find the pronoun, and our pronoun is himself. These are easy to find because anything that has self or selves, they stand out as our pronoun. Then we ask ourselves, can we take himself out of the sentence and does it still make sense? So if I say Mr. Baldwin graded all of his students' essays, notice how I can get rid of it. It still makes sense. So this is intensive. Mrs. Erickson tends to sing to herself while she is scrapbooking. First thing we do is look for our self pronoun, which is herself. Ask myself, can I take it out? Mrs. Erickson tends to sing to while she is scrapbooking. I cannot take this out. This is reflexive. The pets themselves even knew that something wasn't right. Notice how themselves is our pronoun. Can I take themselves out? The pets even knew that something wasn't right. Yes, I can. This is intensive. I myself know how to braid hair. Myself is a pronoun. Can I take it out? I know how to braid hair. Yes, I can. That's intensive. So with that being said, let's skip to something a little different that's on your worksheet. Let's see if we can complete sentences by adding a self pronoun. Is it possible that leprechauns blank do exist? So I'm thinking this is where I'd refer to my interactive notebook page, my first, second, and third person examples of reflexive intensive pronouns, and I would choose themselves because that would work in the sentence. If you would only read one or read more, you would find blank to be much smarter. It'd be yourself. We were able to teach blank how to do origami ourselves. So again, if you're having trouble finding which words work, refer to your interactive notebook. Notice this kind of goes back to the first pronoun lesson. We need to stay in the same person. Remember that agreement lesson. So notice how we is a first person pronoun, so we need to have a first person reflexive or intensive pronoun as well. So I can't say we were able to teach yourselves because that would switch persons. Have you blank your ever traveled to Japan? You is a second person pronoun. I need a second person self pronoun, so you yourself, and that would work.